You're lying. It says in my.
So,
So you know what?
okay.
Over your shoulder. Do whatever you want.
You need the seat right now.
It's yours.
You're going to be up there talking.
Not sure if it's right in the side of line of sight.
Oh, yeah.
You know, if you ever don't measure with. I just eyeball it.
But your eyeballing is really good because I mean, look, they're almost perfectly lined up. So
There's a little tail you guys.
I'm gonna say my head is crooked. That's why my stuff isn't straight.
Maybe.
Ooh, I should probably mute this until we're.
You're going to begin in about 2 minutes. Just start to make your way to your seats. You're going to begin in about 2 minutes. Thank you all very much.
I have 8 people watching. Yeah. Says 8 people are out there. The Shrek told me he was going to.
Oh, is he? Okay.
That's what he told me. He was going to watch it.
So we saw.
I turned it down. But you have mute me.
No.
Hear me anyway.
Everyone, we're going to begin in a minute or two. We have a couple of our visitors from Baton Rouge and supporters from Lafayette that are en route. Got caught up behind some traffic, so we'll begin in just a few moments. Thank you for your patience. our partners from that group, and I think we'll be at 5 minutes. We'll begin at 5 minutes. Thank you. We're very grateful for your being here today. Thank you for being here at Central Louisiana's Regional Digital Equity Stakeholder Meeting. Please welcome yourselves, or on my behalf, on behalf of our entire college, and welcome to the CLTCC. I'm Jimmy Sawtell, Chancellor of the College. And today we're going to have a bit of a presentation, but mostly an open discussion about equity and digital access and things of that nature. And in a moment, we're going to pass the baton and introduce each other. I certainly want to welcome those who are joining us via YouTube. This presentation will be simulcast, but it'll also be archived. We're going to be sharing your feedback, which is what today is mostly about. We'll be sharing your feedback with our partners. So with that, I'm going to pass the baton over to my dear friend, Chancellor of LSUA, Dr. Paul Carell.
It's really an honor and a privilege to be here. This is something close to Jimmy and I's heart, especially with higher education and what we've been through with COVID. We know how important broadband connectivity is for everything we do in Louisiana: economic development, education, communication, and just keeping up with what's going on in the world and all of the above. So when Jimmy called and asked if I would help co-moderate this meeting, I'm really quick to say yes, and I thank them for the opportunity. And all of the sponsors today, and when we have Kisatchie-Delta, Connect Louisiana, the Board of Regents, CLTCC, University of Louisiana, and Lafayette, and then Kathleen, which has the Kathleen Blake Public Policy Center. You can see how important this is to the state of Louisiana. So your input is crucial at this meeting. Without input from the public and from stakeholder groups, we won't have the best plan going forward. So these regional meetings are very, very important. I think we're going to start the meeting off, Jimmy, by letting everybody introduce themselves. So we're going to go ahead and let you give us your name and who you represent. If it's just yourself, just sound I'm just an interested citizen. That's fine. Thank you.
David Lehman, Connect Louisiana. Vinny Vanguard, Connect Louisiana.
Thomas Tyler with Connect Louisiana.
John Kennedy with Urban Cats. Kendall Daniel with Unlimited Texas and more.
Hi, I'm Gerald Long, and I'm with Senator Bill Cassidy's office.
Greg Burke, General Manager of the Vestas Fiber location in Alexandria, Pineville.
Hey, I'm Lauren Ryland. I'm a graduate student and I write part-time for KNLE.
Heather Poole, CLTCC.
Trish Lala, I am the broker and owner of the Trish Lala Group Real Estate Office here in Alexandria.
Melinda Anderson, LSUA.
Joyce Thompson, Sinlaw Area Agency on Aging.
Javante Thomas, Louisiana Central.
Rebecca Kelly, with Board of Regents in Lewis, the Louisiana Library Network.
Celeste Reach Harbor, Rapides Parish Library.
Jim Clinton, Louisiana Central.
Ben Rousseau, Central Louisiana Regional Board.
Trip Duncan, Clico.
Tommy A. Bear, Manager of Governmental Affairs for Clico. Where we going? Here you go. Nominated.
Christina Hurd, CLTCC.
Jessica Lemoyne, CLTCC.
Lisa Hinton, CLTCC.
Taylor Greenhouse, CLTCC.
John Broderick, CLTCC.
Jeff Powell, Rapides Parish School Board.
Max Tedley, Grand Parish School Board.
Karen Gorey, CLTCC.
Matt Thompson, Director of Technology, Rapides Parish School District.
Jennifer Dupree, the Regency STEM Center.
Cynthia Cochran, LaSalle Economic Development District.
Wayne Denley, City of Alexandria.
Clifford Homer, Great Alexandria Economic Development Authority.
Lisa Doney, CLTCC.
Tom Clark, CLTCC.
Brandy Stevens, Kisatchie-Delta.
Brian Broussard, CLTCC.
Thank you all very much. We'd like Denise to come up and say a few words for Connect Louisiana.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, folks. Man, CLTCC came, you guys came on strong today, huh? Half the room. That's great. Look, really, really thrilled to be here. We're also very grateful to the hospitality of Jimmy and Dean. You guys have all done a phenomenal job. In fact, it's like Alexandria is my second home. Like, seems like I'm coming here every other week, just not so bad, even back in the time. So this, what I want to do is I want to hand the conversation, I guess, over to David in a few seconds, but please, these conversations are going to be critically important as we build really two things in anticipation of receiving the infrastructure dollars that we're getting from the U.S. Department of Commerce. So really two things that we're doing at the same time. We have to put together the state's first 5-year plan on how we're going to spend all this money. At the same time, we have to put together the first digital inclusion. We have to do both at the same time. Everything that we do is undergirded by stakeholder engagement and conversations that we're going to have today. And so, we have a great group of folks as you see that are I wouldn't say sponsoring this event, but are really putting this event together. But I need all of you over the next 2 hours not to be bashful. Okay, this is the time to talk about issues that y'all will have, may have now, may have now, and will have as it relates to access, affordability, digital literacy, digital skills, and devices. Really devices, affordability, access, and digital literacy, okay? So I need you to talk as honestly as possible. I need you to talk as passionately as possible, but it's important that you also help us understand from your perspective, whether as a superintendent, and Jeff, you and I have had multiple conversations about the challenges that the kids have. Whether you are part of the community college system here, whether you're a parent, whether you are a small business owner, right? So you have a number of economic development chambers. Jim, you and I have talked about this a ton. This is also an awesome opportunity to understand what we can do once we've made all this investment in broadband to drive Semla's economy forward in areas like ag, manufacturing, small businesses, all things digital. So we're going to have to incorporate all these thoughts and ideas between now and our goal is to wrap these plans by April. And then that's when we're going to hit the gas even more. Right? And we're going to get over, I think, $1 billion. Senator Kisatchie was one of the vocal supporters of the bipartisan infrastructure bill. So we'll get over $1 billion. And from that, we're going to try to accelerate all these efforts as quickly and efficiently as possible. So with that, I guess there's a slide presentation here. And yeah. And then I think David, my colleague, by the way, I'll tell you, the work over the next couple of hours, and actually we're doing something like this in Lake Charles tomorrow, in New Orleans on Friday, and I think November 5th, we're going to be in Shreveport. And then November 10th, we're going to be in Monroe. And then I think next week we're going to be in Schlieber, Louisiana, at Fletcher Community College. You have the entire Connect LA team here. There are all three of us here. There are only 3 of us in this office, okay? But that also speaks to the importance of this topic and the importance of today, the next couple of hours. So let's really spend as much time in the next couple of hours understanding, doing a lot of listening, and hearing from all of you what your challenges, pain points, and also use this time to provide some solutions that you think would make sense local to this community. All right, so with that, thank you.
Thanks, Khalid.
Thank you.
The first thing I want to talk about is why digital equity. I can tell you in my previous career with the LSU Ag Center, working in all 64 parishes, there was nothing more crucial for the citizens in Louisiana, particularly in the rural areas, than having internet connectivity. We've been talking about this for a long time. Finally, we'll be able to do something about it. Where people have been left behind, they have not been able to take advantage of the internet. And you can see, I'm not going to read the slides, but you can see how many residents, almost 20%, don't have internet access. And a lot of children lack internet connectivity or computers at home. Having no coverage of internet availability, except for satellite, which is very expensive. And the skills needed to use the internet. You know, you can get connectivity, but do you know how to access and use it safely? And we're gonna talk a little bit about safety on the internet at the end of the meeting, that LSUA is getting ready to do something about helping people understand the risks associated with being on the internet. But the thing that rang clear to me when I was reading and thinking about this particular question, this country is a great country. And back in the 1930s, we started understanding how to connect people to electricity. And we realized a lot of farms, remote areas couldn't afford it. So what do? We came up with the Rural Electrification Administration, and the rest is history. We provided electricity to anyone and everyone in this country just about that were citizens and important to the economy, like agriculture. This is the same issue. It's as important as electricity, as water, as sewage. And we've been saying that and talking about it a long time, and it gives me great pleasure as a citizen to see that both nationally and as a state and at a local level, we're finally coming together and say, let's make it happen. So this is a very important step in our country, and I'm proud to be part of it today, helping get input on how can Louisiana spend the great resources we're going to get this to become a reality.
As we go into Digital Equity 101, I want to share, we talk about how we're going to get everyone's input. But one of the ways we're going to do it is going to be QR codes on some of the slides. You'll be able to point your camera to that, and you'll have access to the survey. If you're following it on YouTube, those who are following on YouTube, in the description, you will see access to not only the survey, but some of the demographic information and the PowerPoint that we're using today. So if you don't have a computer at home, or if you need some assistance, we're going to have our library open after this session so that you can go in and you can fill out the survey. I did it myself. It's about 10 minutes in length, and it really is in depth in finding out more about what you would like to know. So digital equity is the condition in which all individuals and communities have the information technology capacity that they need to be a full participant in not only our society, our democracy, our economy, and I'll even throw in their education. I like to see digital equity and access to digital is the new running water. It is essential. When the pandemic showed anything, it was that there was a digital divide, which Dr. Correll will talk about in a few minutes. And so we're talking about having access to affordable, sufficient, and reliable internet. That's number one. So that we can power the devices that we have, computer, tablet, cell phone, smart devices at our homes that we're using more and more prevalently. And then have access to applications and services. We're gone are the days where the only way to do something was on pencil and paper in someone's office to apply. Now we're getting closer to a world where the only way you can apply, or one of the limited ways that you can apply for and access services, is through internet. And if you don't have that reliable connectivity, you're falling behind. And then the digital skills that are necessary so that there can be a culturally competent context for communities. So when we think about access, we're not just talking about do I have it, but it's at the speed, reliability, and the affordability that is out there for all of the individuals in Central Louisiana.
A lot of us hear the term digital divide. It's very crucial to the meeting that we're having today and the next step we're taking as a country, trying to close that gap. And it's the gap between those that can afford access and have the skills and have the support to engage in online activity so that they can better their lives. So really you got to look at some of the groups and populations that may be hindered in equal participation because of economic challenges or otherwise, but people of color, indigenous people, low-income households, people with disabilities, older adults. And I'll say this about older adults, and we're getting ready to have something in LSU about that. A lot of theft takes place on the internet with older adults that are very vulnerable. And we have to make sure that we give them the skills to be able to be safeguarded from that. And then obviously a lot of rural areas do not have coverage, like the urban areas do. But the key thing here too is affordability. As we said earlier, somebody may have access to the internet, but can they afford the monthly charges? And that's one of the challenges we have in the digital divide.
Moving right along, we have, why are we writing a plan to begin with? And it's to improve the lives of Louisiana residents. You'll see communities that have high-speed broadband, maybe fiber in a community, and they have access to things that we don't normally have. We're also writing a plan to address the digital equity faced with state's population. Not only population of urban communities, but also that of rural communities. And to secure federal funding to achieve digital equity and to improve the current broadband infrastructure. Benita, I don't want to put you on the spot, but how many dollars are you looking at that are coming from the federal government to our community, to Louisiana?
So really just, I'm gonna be really brief with this because, I wanna make sure we dive into some questions, but in a nutshell, 3 large buckets of money coming from the Federal Communications Commission, which is money that's not necessarily, we don't manage those dollars, but that's a bunch of money going to a bunch of locations in Louisiana. The second is the Gumbo Grant Program, so that's $176 million coming from U.S. Treasury. We made a number of awards in Senma, in Rapides, it was in the Woodworth area, but in other areas, I think we did make awards in Grant, LaSalle, and I think every other parish that's in Senma. I want people to make sure they don't have FOMO, right? You know what that is, fear of missing out. So if you're not included in this round, for me, it's not a, if someone's gonna ever get access to high-speed internet, it's really planned. So whether it's now or 3 months or 6 months, 9 months, or what have you. So that's money coming from Treasury, and then, as I mentioned earlier, the infrastructure dollars, right? That's gonna be over $1 billion. We'll likely see, hopefully, we're really aggressive. First 20% of that money is signed next year, and then just keep going. We're gonna also receive money from the feds to execute on this digital equity effort, and probably get between 20 and 25 million as well for that.
Thank you very much, Denise. When you think about that investment in the new running water, that is, I can't thank you, Senator, for all that you and Senator are doing at the federal level. Senator Long, of course, and Senator Kennedy being the other. We're very grateful. That's being the other. We're very grateful for what they're doing. The inclusivity of these types of conversations, these forums all across Louisiana. When we talk about the one being held today and the one that is being simulcast, we're looking at more than a handful of parishes. We're looking at Voiles, we're looking at Catahoula, Concordia, Grant, LaSalle. Of course, we're looking at Rapides. We're looking at Vernon, Wynn, and anyone else that wanted to be a part of this one via the internet. And the inclusivity of that has been extraordinary. One of the things that we've been preparing for this conversation now for about 6 weeks. And in each of the conversations, we've talked about making sure that no demographic was left behind. As Denise said earlier, FOMO, fear of missing out. We want this to be a conversation that continues. If you know someone in those areas, they can go ahead and watch this. We're going to have it archived. We're going to be taking the minutes from it and sharing it with Louisiana Connect and the West Coast Center as well. So the coordinated efforts of this includes the Office of Broadband Development and Connectivity, the Board of Regents. I want to thank them. We have representatives from the Board of Regents here, and Lewis Libraries. If you've never heard of Lewis Libraries, it's a wonderful, wonderful initiative. And I want to thank Ms. Kelly and, of course, our Ms. Danny Von Tucker, who runs it for the college, and LSUA is a part of Lewis. And what Lewis is access to library information and books and periodicals, especially, that allow folks who are taking e-learning courses to be able to access the same resources that someone who's on campus have access to. The regional planning commissions and other community-based organizations with a shared vision of digital equity. So this is a conversation for everyone. If you know somebody that's interested, if you know somebody especially that's in a rural community, reach out, give them a call. They may not even have the internet access to know or to access this video, but it'll be there, and they can always come to our public libraries, any of our college libraries, to make sure that we keep the conversation going.
Just to reiterate, the regional meetings are very, very important to get input. Region 6 is the meeting we're having today. And I know the regional planning districts like Kisatchie-Delta, Heather, I know you here, they do a really good job of bringing a lot of different organizations together that have a stake in how we proceed. But all of you that are here representing an organization or a user group or population or an interest area, it's very, very important, as Jimmy said, that you go back and get input from them and make sure it's included and submitted for the planning. Very, very important. And I think we're going to be getting input through mid-December, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, mid-December, but don't stop there.
Right.
Okay, and one of the groups, like, for instance, we need also feedback from the pastoral community. Okay, so churches, public safety, veterans groups. Yeah, so I think also, so again, this is going to be an evolving process. So let's just not limit the feedback that we get from just the folks in this room. So we need feedback as well from the pastoral community, so we'll engage with them, public safety, veterans groups, and so on and so forth. And there's a chart that lists all the different organizations.
And I'm sure that they'll be reaching out directly with the parish government, the agencies within the parishes, besides the churches, school systems. I know Superintendent Powell is here, but we need the other parish school systems also providing input. It's very crucial to K-12 education. Grant's here, great. I appreciate the meeting here. They need to really provide all the input we can get, because there may be different needs in different parishes based on their location and some of the challenges they may have that are unique to that region. But stakeholder agencies, organizations are just individuals, someone that lives in a rural area. Any input and all input is welcome and critical and needed. And we can't emphasize that more today. There's no way we can get all the input we need in one meeting. So take it upon yourself as a leader, as a resident of your parish, your city, your community, to go back and give them the update on where they can access how to provide input. It's very, very important. And even if you're from another region, do the same thing. So anyone from any of the other regions are welcome to come to the regional meetings.
So as Vineet said earlier, there are many stakeholders and there are many of the goals. So when you look at the outreach goals of these events, it's to capture the opinions, the feedback, and the testimony and the experiences of diverse stakeholders. And we'll talk about a little bit of that in a moment. Local workforce labor unions, leading to good paying jobs, and the recruitment and the retention of women and marginalized groups across Louisiana, in central Louisiana, specifically today. And so when you look at the organizations that are there, I kind of want to go through them quickly. Some of them are acronyms, and I want to explain what they are. State agencies like the Department of Transportation, Louisiana Economic Development, Office of Community Development, Education, Information Technology, Health and Human Services. That right there captures a lot that is now becoming even more essential. When COVID was at its peak, the ability for folks to get even telehealth locally became more important, but you have to have high definition video and audio, so that's very important. Nonprofit and community-based organizations, workforce development programs, organizations that represent those over 60 years old, Louisiana Educate program, English as a second language, and low literacy, economic development organizations like our friends at Louisiana Central and LaSalle Economic Development District, and others. Our disadvantaged business enterprises, underrepresented groups, natural resources, parish, local, regional government, tribal communities, civil rights organizations, higher education and community college, organizations that represent people of color, LGBTQI+, and immigrants, internet service providers, which we're very grateful for those that are in the audience today that are here from ISPs, community anchor institutions, labor organizations and unions, public housing authorities, organizations that represent veterans and emergency response specialists, public utility commissions, consumer advocates, agricultural organizations, neighborhood associations, organizations that represent formerly and currently incarcerated, unhoused, or homeless, and recovering citizens, and of course, as we said earlier, faith-based organizations. So the conversations that happen within are not just individuals, but then also if you're looking at an organization. For example, even to this day, some of our civic organizations are simulcasting through Zoom or WebEx their meetings. But if you want to be a participant in Rotary or Lions Club and you don't have that access, then the meeting never happened for you. So it's important that we get individual feedback, but that we also get feedback from organizations as well.
Denise may want to speak to this a little bit, but I will say, what's crucial here is there's going to be a lot of opportunity for feedback and input. You know, we're in the stakeholder engagement phase of the timeline. But as you can see, even when the draft plan comes out, it will be reviewed and feedback can maybe be given into the spring. So
I'm gonna, if it's okay, we're gonna go to the questions, okay? And namely because I'm gonna be sensitive of everyone's time since they've traveled a bit. But I want to go ahead and jump to the questions, right? And give these gentlemen an opportunity to hear from you, right? So the bottom line is there's going to be a ton of feedback loops, mechanisms. So this isn't the only time to provide us feedback. And so there's going to be an opportunity to provide us feedback online. That's where we would love for you to provide your feedback on each of these questions. So what Jimmy, I guess you guys will do is there's a list of 7 questions that we'll start, and then let's start getting your thoughts and feedback, okay? So
we have the 7 questions, but they are not the limit. So what we're going to do is this, for the courtesy of those who are watching on YouTube remotely, I'm going to ask Lee Wiley to do his best Oprah Winfrey impersonation. So Dr. Carell and I are going to go through the questions, and then if you have a question, simply raise your hand, and he'll come around with the microphone so that everyone can hear. And so with that, I'm going to turn the baton over to Dr. Carell, who's got the first conversation started. Question, I think we have some feedback already.
I was just wondering if you would quickly explain how to use a QR code.
That's great. All right. So a QR code, let's just say you have a uniform resource locator or URL, fancy word for web address. Well, you might have a web address that's as long as my arm. And so remembering it to type it up or to type it up can sometimes be cumbersome. So a QR code allows you to take your tablet or your cell phone, and actually all of the QR codes you're going to see here will lead to the same survey, the 10-minute survey that we talked about earlier. So kind of demonstrating it, you take your camera and you act like you're taking a picture of that block of dots. And when you're going to see a link come up, and when I press that link, then the survey itself comes up. I'm so glad you brought that up. So if you take your camera as though you're going to take a picture of that, you can zoom into it. You can do what you like. You just put your camera up as though that is a subject you were going to take a picture of, and then you just use your thumb or your finger and you press that. It brings the survey up. And so you can bookmark it. You can email it to yourself. You can do it later on. If you email it to yourself, you can do it at your computer. As I said earlier, right before we came live, I did the survey. It took me about 11 minutes. It's not a long survey, and the great thing about the survey is It's asking you to share your experience. It's asking you to share your ideas. It's asking for your personal feedback, not what you think somebody else thinks, but it asks for what your personal experience is. So with that, Lee Weil is going to be walking around with the microphone, and we'll hand the time over to Senator Long. Senator Long, please, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Sawtelle. Just a couple of points that I want to make. I have had the privilege of attending over 100 broadband meetings statewide. The one question I hear more than any other question is, are we behind? You are not behind in Rapides Parish. As a matter of fact, with Jim's leadership and with the leadership of others, you're at a very, very good place. Now, it's important that we understand that you can become behind if you do not follow the instructions. This survey is probably the single most important item that will be needed in order to determine those areas that are unserved or underserved. It's really important that be addressed. And Denise, I know that's something that you've talked a great deal about. Would you maybe address that a bit more?
Yeah, so look, we're gonna go through this process of identifying those locations, those addresses that are served and unserved. So we're working through that through the government grant program. We're gonna continue to go through that as we build out our state maps, our address level maps, and as we ensure that every single address, okay, not 50% of the addresses, every single address has access to high-speed affordable internet. Now, it's gonna take some time. Because why? This is fundamentally, there's gonna be a lot of construction, there's gonna be a lot of maintenance, there's gonna be a lot of operational things, right? If you think about 1.5 million Louisianians that don't have access, it's 1 out of every 3 folks. So it's gonna be a lot of construction, a lot of maintenance, a lot of operations, and we'll get there, okay? So let's start going through these questions. Yeah, Wayne.
I wanted to answer the question.
Oh, okay, great. And look, when you answer these questions, the first is, right, does your city, parish, region have existing programs or programs of development aimed at specifically addressing digital equity issues? Please remember, it doesn't have to be directly digital equity, okay? I'll give you some examples. A library can offer computer classes. A community college could offer fiber optic splicing classes. A health, you may have within your own little neighborhood a little geek squad. You might have one person that's responsible for just solving technology problems, right? This could be anything and everything related to computers or related to digital skills and devices or what have you. So we're going to leave this sort of, focus a little bit less on the digital part, focus more on what other things could be provided for in your community that we might not be aware of, right?
So I just wanted to mention a program that the city of Alexandria has, it's just started. We've engaged a consultant to help us develop a strategic plan. And the part of the digital equity that we're interested in initially is access. We know that we don't have 100% access in Alexandria. The FCC maps say we have 80% access. So that's not good enough. So we're looking at several different models. We've engaged a consultant to help us with that. We kicked off Monday our own survey of citizens of Alexandria, and you can find that at the city's website. And it's a speed test as well. And so that will help us map the speed both for businesses and residents throughout the city. It's okay if anybody in here gets this and they happen to live outside the city, we'll extend our map beyond the city, because somewhere down the road, we hope to use the loop that Alexandria already has all about the city. It's about a $10 million project that's been going on for about 10 years. It only services our utility department, but it has a lot of dark space or unused access capability that can be tapped into, and maybe could complement a private-public partnership with an ISP, maybe somebody like Nexus or somebody that might be here today that might be interested in doing that to help us fully engage the entire city. So that's where we think we're going But we'll have, the survey going on now, we'll have virtual stakeholder meetings over the next 2 weeks, and then November 15th, we'll have a town hall meeting as well, which will involve and invite all the citizens of LA to give their input. So whoever's the point person on this plan should certainly participate in that and take advantage of that input as well.
I received an invitation to the virtual meeting, so y'all, the word's getting out about what you're doing in the city of Alexandria. Thank you, Wayne. Chip?
First of all, thank you guys for hosting this meeting. Denise, one of the things that we ran into as educators, and we multiple districts here, obviously through COVID, is the disconnectivity that I think really highlighted all this. A lot of us spend a lot of our money on hotspots to do online learning. And I did hear you say a while ago, access to high-speed internet, not just broadband. And so one of the questions that routinely comes up is many of us have very rural areas that we don't anticipate miles of fiber optic cable being run down roads in rural Louisiana anytime in the very near future. So the question is there any consideration of in any of the funding sources to put things like cell towers, there's some private public partnerships in some of these locations that would at least give, I mean, there's multiple communities just here in Refuge Parish, not counting Grand, Cadaboo, and some of these others, that I mean, we just don't anticipate it. I don't be, I'm not amazing, I mean, I know you are working hard, but it'll be years before some of these areas have fiber optic cable. So is that a possibility?
Yes. The short answer is
How can we make that happen? Sorry. Right.
So look, we recognize that in order to solve this problem, it's going to require a student body left approach. So it's, you know, there are gaps in Louisiana where there's very poor cellular coverage. So we are actively addressing in terms of where those gaps are. We think there's probably a gap of hundreds of cellular coverage that's needed throughout the state to help educators, small business owners, farmers, for public safety. We knew how important it was, especially post-hurricane, post-Ida. These hurricanes aren't getting any weaker as they move up to Alexandria and this part of the state, right? So that's, yes, short answer is we're actively doing the analysis to see that piece of the broadband puzzle, which is going to be shorter term because it's going to be significant. But look, all the cellular wireless towers, what do they need to help make those networks go faster? So it needs to really be a parallel approach. You have to look at both at the same time. But help me answer this first question.
Okay, so we do have a question from YouTube for Senator Long. And it says, if they are going to use digital surveys as a main way to determine need, won't that disproportionately impact the areas that are already struggling with access?
Well, it certainly could. The key to all of this is participation. If you're in an area that lacks participation, obviously the information that's needed is going to be very difficult. And look, here's what we do know, and Denise can address this. We do know that the Department of Treasury is in the process of completing mapping the entire state of Louisiana, not only Louisiana, but a part of the Broadband National Program. But it's imperative, and Paul, I appreciate your comment. We're not asking someone to take 30 or 40 minutes or an hour of their time. We're asking them to simply take you and I take 10 minutes, most people take 7. So this is something that is available at no cost, but we need participants. We've had several rural parishes, in particular Tinsall Parish, that made a parish-wide effort to make this a priority. And as a result of that, I can tell you, a small rural parish such as Tinsall has given information that's going to put them in a much, much better position. So the key is participation. Yes, if you don't participate, can it be adverse? Absolutely.
So help me with this. Programs are underlined. What program? And we've got 7. Let me borrow for 1 second. We've got 7 of these questions that we need to get feedback on over the next hour and 15 minutes, okay? I don't think we fully answered question 1 yet. So I need y'all's help to help me identify programs. So please help me throw out, programs, etc.
Have you already identified the workforce investment career centers as part of this from the Connect Louisiana office? Are y'all already down in that type of station? They have small computer centers for job seekers and even small employers, but they also offer companion training. So in addition to, I think you were mentioning it earlier, that the libraries often offer the digital training for individuals to build their skills. That's intermittently offered through some of the business career centers, but it's not universal.
Right, so I want you to think about it. There are a bunch of towns in Louisiana that have less than 5,000 people. Okay, we know what the access issue is. Okay, everyone needs it. So when the pandemic hit, what did you guys do when you suddenly needed tech support or help or skills or what have you?
I can honestly tell you the pandemic, when it hit, we panicked. We panicked, we went in isolation, we didn't know what to do. For someone that's trying to be an entrepreneur, run a small business, things became complicated. In urban areas, especially in Alexandria, for a service concern, for the internet, it's almost zero non-existence. I could barely have a Zoom meeting with an employee because they barely have service in the area. So it becomes a challenge to anyone on the south end of Alexandria, it becomes a challenge. So I'm interested in what's the plans for the urban area, right?
Great, so,
So for programs, the CLTCC does offer, thank you. CLTCC does offer programming using North Star, which is a digital literacy program, which is funded through Lewis, and it does offer training for digital literacy skills, things like that. And anyone can come into our library and they can use that program. They will earn digital badges that shows that they have progressed, that they can show to their employer saying that they have developed these digital skills. And if they come into the library, we have myself, and then we have another librarian who is at, we kind of roam between the campuses. Anyone can come in and we will show them how to use North Star, and we will also train them on how to do easy things with the library, or I'm sorry, not with the library, but with the computer, as far as like applying for jobs, basic things like this. There are people who have a hard time with copy and paste, saving, retrieving. We will show them how to do all of that type of stuff.
Yes. Okay.
All the senior centers in the 20 parishes that we serve have access to computers at the senior centers, okay? And they have staff there that can help them fill out surveys like this. We're presently filling out a survey for our 4-year plan. So that's something that's out there.
And I was going to speak for the Rapides Parish Libraries. We have for years and years provided internet access and training classes. We are now one of a group of 5 libraries statewide who are part of the Digital Navigator pilot project with Lewis, where we are providing access to the same things Danny was just speaking about with North Star, as well as having people on staff who are trained to help you with your specific devices. Each one of our branch locations, we have 10 throughout the parish. You are no more than a 20-minute drive away from a public library at any point in Rapides Parish. And while that 20-minute drive could be a bit of a challenge, we also have public transit. And during the shutdown, we went out into the rural areas and utilized our bookmobile and other vehicles modified with Wi-Fi hotspots to make large-scale roving hotspots that was available so that people could have access. So while we do have some existing programs, I definitely think that this expansion is needed and the infrastructure expansion is needed, because even in our libraries, we do see some challenges with connectivity whenever you have multiple individuals who are trying to utilize the system. We saw that when we expanded our Wi-Fi access, we put in extenders, we went out in the vehicles, we did all that we could to try to support our community in their time of need. But we saw how dire the need was whenever there were so many people who were trying to access. So I encourage everybody to stop by the public libraries, participate in the training that Danny was just speaking of. It's good to see where your skill sets lie and where they need work, and also to support our people who are coming up, who are learning skills for the future, for their careers and for their educational futures. So I really encourage all of you to take a look at those, whether it's from one of the public systems or one of the community colleges or LSUA.
Well, if you could identify yourself, name affiliation for, and then look after you, sir.
Very obviously, Rapids Parish Library Director. But no, and I would like to say the library statewide, and I am speaking on behalf, and perhaps I've turned, but in 1998, all of the libraries, the public libraries throughout our state, were the first in the nation to provide at every single library in the state internet access. We were the first state in the nation, and I see us now, and we're talking about whether or not we're behind the curve. I don't think we are, but I think we need to be really proactive in how we're approaching this so that our kids and that our grandkids and all of the people who are coming behind us have access.
Hi, I'm Melinda Anderson with LSUA, and the first thing I want to say is that during COVID and when everyone was at home, LSUA took the issue and opened up hotspots on LSUA campus for all the rural students who were struggling to get access and to complete their homework, and parents would pull up and they'd work from their cars. So we still have that ability, but we are offering on November 10th a free seminar to anyone in the public. They just have to register for basically it's a cybersecurity safety program. We named it computer safety because we didn't want the older generation to be scared of cyber. But it's all about how to be safe with all of your online things. So if anybody wants any information on that, I'll be happy to give it to you. And Dr. Crawford wants to speak a little bit more directly to that.
No, we want to try to offer opportunities. It's going to be no cost. And we all have friends that may not be that comfortable on the computer, that may have been scammed. So please spread the word about this availability of this training. I spread the word in my neighborhood, and all of my neighbors are coming because they've had issues on the internet. We're going to move on to the next question, but look, these questions are going to be available for the next several weeks and months, so don't feel like we're abandoning that. We can go back to it. But programs is what the first question was about, and now we're going to move to resources you're putting towards addressing the digital divide and digital equity issues. And Dr. Sotels will take that question.
Thank you, Dr. Carrell. We're about at the 3 o'clock mark. We've got 6 questions left. It's about 10 minutes per question. So what I'm going to ask is for our Director of Information Technology, Mr. Brian Broussard, to kind of give us the high sign when we get to about the 8-minute mark so we can keep things rolling in facilitation. Thank you very much, sir. We did have one other comment on the first question we wanted to.
It might actually be related to the future questions ago.
All right, so the second question we have of the 7 is, does our city, our parish, our region have resources, and see that underline there, have the resources that we want to put towards addressing the digital divide or digital equity issues in Central Louisiana?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Again, my name is Lauren Ryan. I attend the Harvard Extension School for my graduate program, and I represent people. So as far as it pertains to the pandemic, obviously, what did we do? Yes, we panicked. We ordered everything through Amazon, everything came to our house in the mail. So thinking about the conundrum of using a digital survey to gauge digital lack of access, the only thing that I can think of that touches every address or house in America is probably the post office. So if there were any money that was eligible through Gumbo or any of those different programs that could be used to create a paper form that could possibly be mailed out to some areas that we already know have struggling issues with that, then that would, you know, it could obviously have a prepaid postage stamp to become that. Things like that would help for people that don't have transportation to go to the library, don't know anything about what we're talking about, because they probably only tune in maybe to the radio or KLB sometimes, so, yes.
That's a great point, and my name is Heather Poole. I work here at CLTCC, but one of the things I know I get every single month in the mail is a bill from my electric company. So I would say, go ahead and tag that QR code, Trip, for Clico or whoever, because, you know, that is a great way to get it, and I promise we do open those.
Any other comments or questions or feedback on resources locally? We have a couple over here. Mr. Wiley, if you want to grab the mic and so this question deals with the resources that we have available within Central Louisiana to address the digital divide or digital equity.
Yes, and I'm Jennifer DePriest, the director of the Region 6 STEM Center. Each of the directors in the state were asked to pick an initiative. Mine's called Recipe for Rural STEM, because the way we handle the digital divide in the rural areas is different. 70% of our new budget is going to programs, and we are also partnering with Region 8, and we're going to have a big event here at LSUA on March 9th so that we can see how to do these things to help our rural communities.
Thank you. We had another right behind me.
I'm Matt Thompson, the Director of Technology at Rapid Spirit School District. Just want to tell you the future is looking bright as far as getting digital literacy into the hands of our future, our kids. The district, our goal is one-on-one Chromebooks. So those kids that live in those communities, they can come to school. We do have high-speed internet to all the school systems in our district. And they can come to school and they do use computers and they get literacy and they get trained and they get trained how to use them, because that's the primary format of testing across the state, if not the nation now. So the future is looking bright. And those graduating high school or getting out of school with that, taking that with them. So that's just something to look forward to and forward about.
Thank you. Maybe we have someone to try up.
Brady Stevens with Kisatchie-Delta. So I work with the Louisiana Watershed Initiative, and we've had multiple voices, heavily rural, that broadband access and speed are important, and they are critical needs for mitigation and resilience activities. By using river gauges, data systems, and communication improvements, these all require improved digital capacity and would be highly beneficial for community capacity building, response, emergency preparedness, and future recovery efforts. So I just wanted to get that as an announcement for the people that can't be here today.
Thank you very, very much. Anyone else want to comment on available resources to address either the digital divide or equity issues?
I don't know if it's Brian Broussard, CLTCC. I don't know if it's actually digital divide, but our college is offering training for fiber optic splicing in December, late November, December. So if you're interested in actually helping to build out the network, come here.
Certainly addresses the digital divide by providing more city, parish, regional resources. Yes, sir, absolutely. Any other comments on these two fronts? What existing resources or emerging resources do we have or do we wish we had that addresses the digital divide or digital equity issues? Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to speak as a participant, and actually it's triggered by your comment. So glad to see that. I knew y'all were addressing job training needs for folks to have improved skills to support the deployment. I do know that we've actually had challenges as we've been swapping over our server inside our office, not being able to find folks that could be bonded and performed and that kind of thing in order to help address IT issues for small organizations, that there just aren't the number of businesses that already exist for that. So while there are resources being deployed and all of us working in our separate ways together, if you will, we're still limited on what is present and what the quality, the reliability of even the providers are. And I'm not talking about like internet providers per se, but like those consulting services. And there's just not that many of them, and you pay top dollar. And we actually had the really fun thing of the person who did show up disappeared in the middle of a job without completing it. And so, like, even if they hit all the pegs, you do all your due diligence, it can happen to anyone. And if we're experiencing this in a small organization, we're also hearing our communities with those issues, our communities without the remote storage that's required under the APs with the Louisiana legislative auditor. And we're talking tiny villages, and even the small nonprofits that get public monies have to have that cloud storage backup or offsite storage. And that doesn't exist in an affordable way. Who's next? Because I definitely don't need to keep them.
Thank you.
It's time to move to the next question anyway.
All right, very good. Perfect timing, everybody. Friendly reminder, the QR code that you see there, even though there are different slides, QR code remains the same. It goes to the exact same survey.
Y'all may have read recently the story about the Ukraine and all the utilities being destroyed by Russians. And the world's richest man, Elon Musk, you know what he did? Provided internet service free of charge for the citizens and the soldiers. 20,000 terminals started. A lot of people didn't read that story, but it was very intriguing to see the needs there. And someone tried to address it and had the resources to do it. We talked a lot about barriers, I think, already to some degree, but our next question, I think, is very, very relevant, because obviously, we wouldn't even be here today if there weren't barriers to people having access to broadband and the internet. So, what do you see from where you sit in your community, in your organization, or you as just a citizen, as the barriers you're facing to achieve equity in digital access? That's the question we want to try to address right now.
Thank you. Again, my name is Lauren. I spoke about this at the Regional Economic Summit, and that one thing that I see very widespread throughout Rapides Parish is the lack of accountability for the affordability and the quality of the broadband that we already have. I know at one point, Congressman Mike Johnson took that Suddenlink, that was a whole fiasco. Just situations like that are far and wide, and so I think people don't have ways to really advocate for themselves when they're calling and trying to get help because their internet service is spotty, it's dropping all the time, or they're spending it's basically disproportionate amounts of their income going towards these types of services. So one thing that I posted beneath in that summit was just that I hope that as this money comes out, obviously certain companies will win the contracts to be able to provide these services. The community coalition and the continued protection of the quality of what they actually receive will become even more important as the access spreads throughout the state.
And I'm actually going to, again, this is Reach Harbor, Rapides Parish Library. What I have to say is related to what she just said, actually. I believe that the lack of reliability has also manifested in a lack of trust from individuals within the communities, particularly those in rural communities. And I say that as someone who is a lifelong resident of Louisiana. I grew up in a rural community in Avoyles Parish. I lived in a rural community in Beauregard, and now I live here in Alexandria. So I'm familiar, and these are my people, and I understand their qualms about trusting information coming out from ISPs or even information coming out from governmental agencies. There is a large amount of distrust. And I think some of those barriers can be broken by going through local community organizations, not just libraries, though that's of course what I'm going to naturally say, but also, as you're talking about, ministerial alliances and nonprofit organizations that they have rapport and trust with. Because I think there is, due to those struggles that people have faced for years, there is some community distrust, and that is a very, very high barrier.
Thank you.
Jim Clinton, Louisiana Central. I think for us, the overwhelming challenge is the inherently rural nature of the region. This is a place where the inner city is rural. And that last mile is a long time coming. It's also an aging and shrinking population that all of us, everybody in this room is trying to reverse. So I think as much as any region in the state, the rurality that we represent is our biggest challenge. Maybe co-equal with our history of racial divides, cultural divides that can also magnify the trust issues and make the whole process more difficult. I don't think any of that means that we can't do it. I think it means that we're used to this. We have to work harder, we have to work better together, and we have to understand the nature of that challenge.
That's a very good point. I think that's the reason that each region is going to have to look at what's the unique challenges and barriers that we have. So Central Louisiana may have some uniqueness that has to be addressed in the plan that may be different than New Orleans or Baton Rouge or Lafayette or even Lake Charles. There may be similar issues in Northeast Louisiana because of its rural makeup. But a very good point. The two barrier, I guess, questions were one, barriers facing city parish region, which that was kind of a regional issue. But the other part of that is the next question, but we don't have to leave the topic of barriers. But are there certain populations in the community that have more specific barriers that we need to know about, where you sit and where you represent maybe a population? Yes, sir.
You know, when we start talking about the barriers that are out there, I think the city of Alexandria just said that 80% of the city is covered, and we obviously know that isn't. And I'm not saying that the guy's not telling the truth, but when we look at the level of poverty in the city of Alexandria, we're in excess of over 52% of the people can't make ends meet on a month-to-month basis. So obviously those numbers are not right. And when we start taking a look at Southeast Alexandria is not even exposed to tons of the stuff that we're talking about right here, right now. And so, we have to really do a deep dive on the baseline of what we're looking for from starting at. And we know that 80% is not correct in the city of Alexandria.
I know we have another question.
Remember to introduce yourself when you have the mic.
Can I just follow up with something you said?
Sure, I just want to follow up.
Y'all can respond. When it comes to that particular issue, people that may not be able to be reached, all we're doing today, in fact.
Right.
Does that maybe challenge us to maybe go into the faith-based community possibly and go inside that community specifically? That's what I thought. Right. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you're right. 80% is probably not correct. That's what FCC says. And that's based on what's reported back by the ISPs to the FCC. Supposedly that's going to be improved and a more accurate number. Part of the reason you do the surveys is to try to zero in on those areas, those streets, and the exact number that don't have really high speed or adequate speed on anything, any access, which is a challenge to try to identify that. And since we're talking about these surveys, it will be important for the library to try to push out those surveys to people who don't have service, because it's really difficult. The way they're designed, it goes to your house, and if you didn't have a computer in your house, you're not gonna take the survey. So it's gonna be an ongoing challenge, but we know the numbers aren't right, and supposedly it'll improve over time, but you're exactly right.
But I will repeat, the surveys, Jimmy, correct me if I'm wrong, there will be a paper version of it as well.
Sure.
We have
Gotta
to
get
make
it
sure.
out.
That's right, and we get that out. And I'm gonna put my neck a little bit on the block here and stretch with Jimmy. I think Jimmy and I both would be willing to go into a community anywhere in this region and help present this again to them and help them provide the input. So we're willing to do that because of the mission we have as educators. So I want to offer that to you.
We got two people. We got two mics, but we'll go with that mic first.
Okay, so I just have a comment on this. I mean, a lot of people use Facebook and TikTok and all those apps. Why not be able to put that out in communities that way? The QR code or a link out there for people to be able to use it that way. But indirectly related to this, I'm not from around here. I moved from North Carolina, and one of the things that they offered in their communities to help women in underserved populations learn technology things and IT things so that they could get jobs and do other things, is that they work through a community college that offered an IT class that offered certifications with like CompTIA, ITF Plus, and Microsoft MTA. And I took part in that just to be able to give myself something else to learn. I think that using local resources would be an important part of trying to get all these things and put out there.
We are talking about barriers here. We're having the same issue with our surveys for the elderly. We asked the rural areas to the councils on agents to reach out to the people, get the surveys completed, the paper ones. And then my staff and some of the staff of the councils on aging are entering them digitally, so the information will be out there in a format that can be used to complete what y'all need to complete. So I'm thinking maybe the student, if you could get the paper surveys in, maybe some of the students could spend an hour of their day, entering or something, I don't know.
Yes, I'm Ben Russo, Executive Director of the Central Louisiana Regional Port. One of the interesting things is most of our, there's 33 ports in the state of Louisiana. Most of them are in rural locations because we're heavily industrialized or on the body of water. So most of the tenants that we have or partners at these facilities use a tremendous amount of bandwidth. I mean, you'd be amazed at a person that's just offloading aggregate, how much they use to communicate with a lot of different entities. And it's extremely expensive to get fiber out to these locations, to run them out from a far distance. And then the problem is once you get it there, you pay for them to build it all out to it. Then they start piggybacking on it. So you lose your bandwidth because you just paid for the entire line to go out to that tenant. And it's been piggybacked the entire way there. So that's one of the problems. But the other problem, I guess, for the gentleman talking about the amount of people in Alexandria, one of the things that I would say on that is you have to get the Public Service Commission and the regulators involved that are dealing with the bandwidth providers that are regulated. Because if you're in an area of the state, and we are in an area that's not growing as fast as some of the other areas, if you're in St. Tammany Parish, then there's a lot of new construction there, and they're putting fiber to the houses, they're doing things. These people are putting that in because there's really no cost from that in. And the asset is probably a 30, 40-year asset. So it's being depreciated over that time. So the utility doesn't have any value of replacing. However, around here, that asset's been there, they've been earning on it the whole time. It's still probably being depreciated. And the Public Service Commission is not incentivizing them to replace that asset to get something that increases the bandwidth. So that's part of the level that I would say you have to do to get the replacement of existing assets to give a better and stronger bandwidth.
I'm Ken Lou Daniel, Unlimited Texas and more. We also run a summer program called Camp Power, where we do teach marketing skills and things like that, and internet-based things for the children to further either develop a sense of income or just general knowledge. And one of the things that I see often is possessing skills or not. If you have low quality service, you're limited to what you can do. And that's the biggest challenge that I know a lot of people in my community face. Having access to good quality service is everything, because at the end of the day, that's your time equals your money and everything else. And it's an economic disparity. I know when I reach out to people, talk to people, I don't care what it's about. A lot of times it could be uploading a video where I can't upload a part of the video because I frankly don't have the service in the area. And everyone can't travel to the other side of town for things. So that's one of the hugest issues I see.
Anybody else have any other comments on barriers for certain populations or in the broader sense of the parish, region?
One thing I think about is like the farmer out that's never, like has electricity, that's never needed internet for anything. How do you convince him that he actually needs fiber to the home? That's an education type thing we need to do.
I can assure you farmers know that already because their tractors need digital capability.
I'm a city guy, so I don't know.
Yeah, they have driverless tractors. Yes, ma'am.
We've had a experience for a number of years now with several of the loggers carry 2 cell phones by 2 different providers in order to just be able to make a phone call or send a text, which does not even get to what you're saying, like with ag and their equipment. They can't keep up with the satellite connectivity that they would need for that, let alone even a basic text or phone call when they're going in the woods. And this is what the second or third largest agricultural industry is logging.
It's the most valuable agricultural commodity in the state. Forestry is #1. Yes, ma'am.
I am Danny Von Tucker, and I'm the Director of Library Services at CLTCC. I would say that even if people have access, just having the digital skills, knowing basic things like how to save, where they save, and where to find it, because most people, when they do their computing, they're not doing it at a laptop or at a desktop, they're doing it on their cell phone. And so when they go to an actual desktop or a laptop, they don't know how to do it because the skills needed are very different. So we, the public library, the libraries in our communities, they all offer training on that, but it's just getting the students, or getting students, people to understand that there are different skill levels or skills that are needed depending upon what device you're using and what you're doing on those devices.
We need to move on to the next question, sir. But again, we're going to have the availability for input for the next several months, couple of months. Let's move on. Jenny's going to take the next question.
Before we move to the next question, I do want to acknowledge our folks that are on YouTube watching. There's about 25 that are watching on YouTube, in addition to those that are in the room. And there's a Wayne S. I'm going to summarize. He sent about 5 messages where he talked about the importance of libraries, and that at our libraries we have very high-speed internet. In fact, he said at his library, or close to his library, there was a 500 megabyte fiber optic speed that was there. He mentioned Starlink, a company owned by Elon Musk that Dr. Grella talked about earlier, where they can celestially open up Wi-Fi for regions and be very specific about who has access to it. Then, of course, there was a question earlier by Matt L., who asked about if we're using surveys digitally only, do we sometimes prohibit or marginalize or leave out those who do not have that access. And then we got a response from Dr. Stephen Barnes, who's with the Blanco Center for Public Policy, who said that was a very good question and a very good concern, and we share that same concern as well at the Blanco Center. Beyond these meetings, we will also conduct focus groups, and we want to connect the people like today's audience that are here and on YouTube and future other ones to connect. And the online forum is a way to capture as many possible. And we want to include community-based, faith-based, local government, and others for those focus groups as well. So keep those comments coming. I want to thank Kelly and Maria for passing those along as they come across on YouTube. The next question, I think we have 2 or 3 remaining, is does your community, business, or organization have a digital equity plan in place or under development? So that, I know that we have a lot of plans. Wayne did mention earlier, the city is working on surveys. So is there anyone who's represented here or online through YouTube want to share if they've got an economic development organization or if they've got a gumbo grant that's out there that talks through a strategic plan regarding digital equity and the digital divide? Don't be bashful.
I didn't want y'all to get tired of my voice, but we do. As part of the Rapid Parish Library Strategic Plan, which began this year, we finished it this year, and actually it's going to be implemented in 2023 through 2028 for the next 5 years. A major facet of that is utilizing some of these digital equity principles that we learned through the pilot project that we're participating in via Lewis. And we have begun that by instituting a higher level of classes and a diversity of classes. As Danny mentioned earlier, we've noted the disparities in different communities and different age groups and what they are comfortable with. Danny and I are roughly in the same generation, so we had an analog childhood, but a digital adulthood. And so we saw that transition happen, but there are many people who are on both sides of that divide who don't understand how to make those transitions among devices, and that's a major challenge. But we have included in the library's digital equity plan to make sure that we are continuing to expand our Wi-Fi access, expand our access to devices like hotspots and laptops, which are available for checkout at all of our library branches now. The in-house systems are constantly being upgraded and maximized for use, and we're hoping that particularly in areas like South Alexandria, as was previously mentioned, our King branch could see something like a tower or something nearby that we could have some expanded access, because there are communities that are currently not being appropriately served, and we simply don't have the access or the bandwidth to do that.
Thank you. Any other feedback? I would like to go on record, or we'll pass the baton to Ms. Heather, but I would like to go on record that when we move from South MacArthur Drive to downtown, the increase in the speed and the capability. When you talk about bandwidth, you're not just talking about speed, you're talking about how many computers can be on the internet simultaneously and have that same level of speed. And we notice a dramatic difference, and the way that we are set up is we can increase that if we were to go to fiber, where the switches and the routers and the category 5 cable, et cetera, are already in place. I want to recognize one of our IT leads, Dr. Sharon Laycock, who's been a part of that, of course, Mr. Brian Russo. Kevin?
So 2 things. One is kind of a housekeeping note, and then another's response. Housekeeping note is, I bothered Benita outside and I said, hey, we're gonna go talk to some of these folks that were getting responses, and some of the folks in the room have asked y'all, can y'all keep pushing this out there? I said, can we just, if we have a small group meeting, put the responses from those persons that may not, have that capability to digitally answer this, feel free to enter it for them, even if it's a small group meeting. Put the name of the meeting in the response, when it gives you the opportunity of the name and who the contact person will be. So that way we can get back to it. Because while the state is using this, we're also anticipating ongoing needs. The reason you see so many names up there, and even more than what's on here, is we are all making these concerted efforts to touch one another and be very inclusive and combine these efforts, kind of like rising tides, that we all move in the same direction for it. And so, that's kind of my little side note to that is this becomes part of the regional priorities and gets both as regional priorities in the statewide plan. It is part of this is how they're building the statewide plan. So this is part of that regional voice, is to have that identity, is that we're going to continue to do that. We've actually had broadband identified in our comprehensive economic development strategy for a number of years, that it is cross-cutting. And so when we work with individual communities or nonprofits on development activities, we look at ways that if they can at all muster it to include not just water, sewer, electricity, gas sometimes, other modes of transportation, but also look at adding that capacity for the digital connectivity as part of the cost of the project. And it's hard to get that approved sometimes in the past. There's not been the mindset from funding entities to be diverse in allowing those types of expenses and the personnel to help transform us into a digital society.
Yes, we have more feedback.
Just to piggyback off what she just said, like the city of Alexandria, I think maybe 10 years ago, built out a fiber network out to basically all of the community centers. And, if this information was known, this could have certainly helped us during the COVID epidemic when tons of our kids couldn't get into the Rapides Parish school systems and different things of that nature. We have to be able to, between government organizations, be able to cooperate and leverage the infrastructures that the ratepayers have put in place. And we've got to kind of incorporate those things into what we're doing as we move forward. Because when you look at it, the city of Alexandria is positioned pretty well, but there's just not I'm not going to get in trouble and say anything right now.
You're right. Thank you, sir. Any other feedback on if there are existing or plans in the work to address digital equity or digital divide? Yes, ma'am.
I represent LaSalle Economic Development, and yes, we have a plan, and through the current funding federally and via state funds, 85% of our parish residents will receive fiber internet to the home, so we're working hard to meet that other 15% of the state. We just need it to get here tomorrow.
Amen. Thank you for your hard work there. LaSalle Parish is one of our coverage areas. I was there this weekend at Howard Neighbor Day, Regina homecoming reunion, and I know that rural community is very grateful. 85% of the parish will have fiber. I don't know what percent of Alexandria has fiber, but that is tremendous. Thank you. Any other feedback on plans or plans in the work? All right, we'll move over to the next question, and it is what supports, and you can read that as resources, but what supports does your community or our community need to address digital equity gaps in Central Louisiana? What supports or what resources do we need? Now, I know that's probably something every one of us could answer, but if you're speaking on behalf of yourself or your civic organization or your faith-based organization or whatever community group that you're here representing, either as an individual or as someone you're a part of, what resources or what supports does your community, our community, need to address digital divide and digital equity?
Thank you. I would say that it's probably twofold. In Alexandria, as he was mentioning, widespread poverty would mean that stipends for monthly subscriptions to internet service would be extremely helpful. If that money could be used to deploy devices as well. That would be kind of a dual help. And then on a completely different note, I would say that leadership in how to synthesize community relationships to kind of especially bridge divides of generational gaps. I personally don't have my grandparents around anymore, but you know, I can see that there are people of all ages in my community. And if there was an ambassador program that was launched by this coalition or something like that, where younger people or just anybody that felt confident in how to use these services could pair with someone that does not know how. That could just be another piece of kind of a holistic approach about how to meet people where they are. And that would be a hard thing to do from individual level, like where do I even start? But if that was kind of introduced into the program, I think that would really be helpful.
Yes, Lane?
Well, this is probably not exactly what you want, but we really need, in our entity, expertise, technical expertise. There's something the city of Alexandria doesn't have, and most cities I've found don't have that. That's one of the reasons they hire consultants and consult with ISPs as well. So it's a need, and I hope the community colleges and LSUA will start producing people that can provide some of that support, because this is like a new utility. This is a new utility, and we don't have the equivalent of electrical engineers in every city and within those departments to make good decisions. Some cities have already made some not so good decisions as they went forward in trying to develop plans. So that's part of the problem that we have, is just the expertise.
Thank you. Any other feedback, any other ideas?
And when I say that, excuse me, if there's anybody that has expertise that would like to be on the city's team to participate within the city limits of Valley, we'd welcome them to participate.
Thank you. And how would they get in touch if they wanted to participate with the city's initiative?
Well, contact me if you would.
If you want to give your,
Wayne.Denley@cityofvalley.com.
say that again one more time.
Wayne.Denley@cityofvalley.com.
Thank you, sir. I know that offer is very sincere. Any other feedback on what supports would we need to help to address digital divide, digital equity? Okay, there being none, we have one question remaining, I believe, Dr. Corral. And before we go into the question, and I'm going to ask Dr. Corral to round this out, and Lee, if you want to say a few closing words, we certainly want to offer you that opportunity. There are several ways to have your voice being heard. Number one, what you're doing right now and just sharing. We're going to take a transcript of this. We're going to provide it to the NEAT and Louisiana Connect and everybody involved, Blanco Center and everyone, just so that your words will be captured and they will be documented. Number two, if you don't have technology at your home, or if you need help with the QR code, let us know. Ms. Annie Von Tucker is going to open up the library if you want to go ahead and do the survey there. I hear it takes between 7 and 11 minutes to complete. Third, share the QR code. You go to our YouTube channel, that's Central Louisiana Technical Community College, or go CLTCC. I know the simulcast was also shared on LSUA social media and shared on ours. Share that, and in the description, you'll see 3 links. One of them is for the survey. One is for the PowerPoint that you see here, and the other one is the demographic information about family income and all sorts of things that deal with parishes and what access they have. And Dr. Burrell, I believe that information is being updated on the regular. So it's a living document. You can kind of see how much we've progressed over a period of time. So I'm going to sign off and say thank you for being here. This is a wonderful conversation. Dr. Corral is going to bring the last question, and then we'll pass the time for me for a few closing words. And thank you all very much.
Really, the last question ties everything we've done today and why we're here, but also what's the path forward? And the question really is, as we work and continue to work on digital equity, one of the best modes of communication that we should consider to reach all the stakeholder groups, which some of you represent, many that we were invited. There are a lot of people invited to this meeting, but obviously people have conflicts and they can't come to the meeting. So we need to communicate with all the stakeholder groups. So we'd like input from you on this question. And what's the best mode of communication for us to reach the stakeholders that we need to get input from?
Again, Heather Poole with CLTCC. I've had the great privilege of working in higher education for a long time. Started with the Board of Regents for about 15 years and then LSUA and now here. One of the things about higher education is we do communicate with our students and our faculty and staff, and we use similar methods of communication a lot now via text. We have a program here called Signal Bind. We're able to send out messages and links through our internet servers and can send this QR code to our students via Signal Bind, and I encourage all my higher ed partners to do the same. But then also, we've been very fortunate to have strong supporters like AT&T, and I think that we really need to have a discussion with our top leaders, whether it's Cox Communication or Clico or Entergy, but you know, having those entities like AT&T, I get messages on my cell phone on the regular that says your bill's ready or you've reached your usage capacity. But I would think that they would be very strong partners and advocates for this and being able to send this message out to their followings.
Melinda Anderson with LSUA. I just would have a question. Are we going to work with LMA, the Municipality Association? I grew up between Chainville and LeCount, both very rural areas. So those mayors probably either didn't know about it today or couldn't make it because they're working a second job to serve as mayor of those small towns. How do we go about addressing those rural people?
I think I think you may want to answer that question, but I know when you look at small municipalities, you gotta reach out to them. You can't wait for them to come to you. So you go to the city council meeting, you go meet the mayor. It takes a lot of work to do it right, though. And if you're gonna make an appointment or try to catch them in their office, some mayors are part-time. It's not a full-time job. But they are very interested in this topic. There's no doubt. I hear about it all the time from the students that live in those small communities. So I don't know if we have the resources to do it, but to do it right, you gotta go to them.
What about the town clerks?
Police jury, sheriff's association. I mean, you're calling it the opinion leaders of the community. And many of them may be the church pastors. We talk about Facebook. They're the leaders. That's who people will listen to. So you gotta go to them. You gotta go talk to the pastor. You gotta go maybe visit their service. And I'll be honest with you, I worked in a rural parish in Cameron for 14 years. There are people that cannot read.
Yes.
People that can't read. I always assumed when someone came to my office, I didn't act like they could read. I was being very open to them. Look, if you can't fill out, I'll help them, so that they weren't embarrassed. But they still may be on the internet. They still may be on the internet, they just can't read very well. So how do you get that feedback? It takes some patience and some respect.
We'll keep it right here on this road, Trish LaLug, and kind of as a jack of a lot of trades and in a lot of different things, I was kind of to spur a couple of things here. That was one of my answers to this when I filled out the survey, especially right now we're in the middle of political season. You have a lot of town hall meetings, those small, that's how you can get out to a lot of these more rural communities. But then one thing that she brought up a long time ago, that we are talking about a lot of the population that they don't have a computer in their home. They might not be using, they might have a cell phone, but they're not getting this. And so going back to some of those media outlets that these people have, I think, I sit on talk radio every morning and we reach a lot of that rural community because they do have a radio and they listen to us on the radio. And so just offering to put this out there as a topic and having some of you come and more than one time, because sometimes it takes numerous times talking to people, but just saying, hey, look, this is what we're looking at doing, and then letting them know how they can get this information on their own.
Communication, this is something that I really take a lot of time to think about. It's getting more complicated than it gets simple. I often tell the people from KLB and KLDX, they're so valuable to educating our community. There's a lot of people, that's the only information they get. It's 6 o'clock news. They don't have internet, or they don't get on there, but they don't have a mobile device, maybe, or they have one but they don't use it. So that, really glad you're here. I want to compliment the station community. Extremely important public service. Radio. How many of us don't listen to the radio? We all do. When we're traveling in the car, we're listening to the radio. Now, a lot of times you may be directly from your phone or maybe music you download. But I like to listen to live radio. I want to hear people that kind of live in real time. And I want to learn what's going on in the community. So y'all have a powerful voice as well. And again, it takes a lot of time to connect to the right people and to the stations and to the talkback shows that really allow for people to call in. Now tell me more about this. Those are really valuable. And I know Jimmy listens every morning because he called, hey, they talked about LSU. While I'm thinking about it, there is a link. A lot of people, we talked about QR code, but you can also write this link down and use it to connect as well. And again, we're gonna have paper forms for you to fill out to get feedback. And I'm gonna go back to what we told you. I mean, if we need to come into the churches and to the community center and get people together and help them provide input, we'll do that. Well, we're not part of this official team,
Right.
but we're saying we're willing to help get that done. It's too important.
And the other thing I would add, I definitely understand where Trish is coming from, but we also have this millennial group of young people today. And when they turn over in the morning, they pick up they look at the phone. If you like my little boy that attends that, I mean, he is watching movies. So all of his information is coming in a digital manner. So we got to make sure that we are communicating with those communicators who can communicate, in this new environment as well.
What amazes me when I see a 3-year-old on an iPhone,
Right.
utilizing the capability. This world is so different. I grew up, there was no internet.
That's right.
And there was no phone, there was no, we had a candy computer, and wasn't even connected to anything except for what was on the hard drive. The world has changed so much, so that's why I was saying it's more complicated. Because the younger generation is in a whole different world. It's like we have 2 different worlds, or 3 maybe.
I'm just gonna piggyback off this, Kendall Daniel and the test more. I have, I've been on social media as well, and trust me, we not watching the news. We ain't listening to the radio, we ain't doing none of that. Monthly, just on my personal page, I have like 500,000 reach monthly. So when you talk about reaching out to people, we all need all hands on deck.
That's right.
So everybody need their hands on deck with this.
One of the things I would like to bring up, kind of, Paul has been right here. I guess as a summary of all of these and add one part to it. As part of the growth of Louisiana, and I'm sure Louisiana Economic Development Association is in the middle of this also, but the one thing that we need to look at is when we're increasing the bandwidth to certain areas, LED has identified general areas that are developable areas for bringing in economic projects. And, a lot of projects in the state of Louisiana do not locate in urban areas, these plants and so forth. They want to locate in rural areas because they don't want to be located right next to a whole bunch of people from that end. So one of the things is when you're spreading out and making your plan is if you would coordinate with and I know Jim was here from that standpoint and different ones, but identify these corridors or these locations, these certified sites or so forth, and make sure those areas have that bandwidth or in that plan to have that bandwidth, because that's what helps to incentivize other entities to locate there and grow in the future. And because, say, Central Louisiana, we're the crossroads. We have an I-14 corridor that will eventually be built out that will go straight through here. We've got I-49. We've got all these 4-lane highways. We're set up for logistics. the logistical hubs need an awful lot of access. And we just need to make sure that that's located in that access is located in areas where those entities can grow to. Not in the flood zones or other areas from that standpoint, but areas where they can grow so we can see an economic development, revitalization in some of these regions.
Just a quick add-on to your point about the radio they turn on in their home every morning, and that's where they get their information from. That's the same radio stations which you're going to listen to in their car, because economically they're not going to have Sirius, they can't afford it, so they're going to have it there as well.
I have a comment. I'm Jessica Lemoyne, I work here at CLTCC, but I have 15 years of radio experience at Summer Broadcasting, at Christian radio stations, and I was thinking, I know several of the Summer Broadcasting stations are 100,000 watt stations, and they're not, those stations are your contemporary kids station, and that reaches various groups that the talk radio station won't reach. So I was thinking maybe that's an idea of something that we could use to reach different age groups and different types of people. Also, you guys were talking about reaching the pastoral groups, but we have several Christian radio stations. I worked at Radio Maria, and Radio Maria is a national radio station, actually reaches worldwide. And I don't know, we could think about perhaps utilizing those Christian radio stations to get out to various Christian groups. So just a couple ideas.
Great input, thank you so much. So really, when you provide input related to communication, something you may consider doing related to reaching everybody that we need input from is give us suggestions on groups that we need to engage that may not be here today. So that would be really good input. Any additional organizations, contacts would be important. And like I said, if we need to come in and help an organization or a population or a group or a church, I think that there are people willing to do that. And from the educational, higher education population, junior high specifically. And I'm sure the others will help as well. This is too important, and we want to get it right. And I know the state of Louisiana and the nation and the congressional delegation who helped provide some of the funds that we're trying to bring into the state pretty quickly. They want to make sure that everybody's included as best as possible. And they wouldn't have these regional meetings if they weren't. So it's important to us. Jenny and I both have students and faculty that live all over the place. And we want to make sure nobody's left behind and we can close this gap. And the gap is still pretty wide. So we're not closing anything now, we still have a little bit of time. Any other comments, questions? Yes, ma'am.
I hate to ask you to repeat something, but could somebody repeat where we can have the slides and those things again?
We're gonna distribute.
You're gonna distribute through the email?
Yes, Dr. Sawtell said that they would be posting a transcript with the slides and with the QR code for everyone to get it, so I'm sure.
She's asking where.
Where? Right, no, I imagine they'll be posting it on their channels, because this is recorded on their YouTube channel today. But in addition to that, we'll make sure to send out links or contact folks based on the contact information.
Okay.
From either what was sent out as invitations or through the registry information. In fact, I believe it's somebody with CLTCC, I've already texted him the link to this before it started. So he could see the questions as to what was gonna come up. So, though it's multiple groups involved, everyone involved, we would love to have you continue to be the ambassador that you already are for the community to help get the voice. So if you need any support whatsoever, feel free to call any of us. They've already volunteered to speak. I'm going to volunteer them a lot. But, I imagine that this is something that's already on so many people's minds. It's just making sure that we're all using these same questions, these same surveys, so we can all benefit from it, because there are so many different groups that have pieces of the puzzle. But none of us can afford to do this by ourselves, because we wouldn't have been where we are today, pursuing this statewide effort to pursue the federal dollars. That being pushed right now with Connect Louisiana is to be extremely inclusive in digital equity planning and in digital inclusion plan while pursuing the resources to get as many of these voices in. And please tell me if I missed something, because I know this is what you're traveling from like before day one to share throughout Louisiana.
Yeah, I mean, look, this stuff is incredibly complex. It's complex to us on a daily basis, and we get to read this stuff every day. But more so even to small town mayors. This, you know, as you said, this requires repeated visits, repeated cycles of conversations. So our homework assignment as an office is, you've got a bunch of these federal dollars, and you need to address this whole access affordability issue as quickly as possible. You got gumbo, you got infrastructure dollars. It's gonna take some time, okay? But we're gonna work as quickly as possible. What I need, I guess my homework assignment to you all are these great suggestions today, but also great solutions and tactics. Because I need you guys to bubble up and sort of be our sort of appendage to making sure we're running at the same time. Because the thing is, once we make these investments in companies, then the shift of responsibility goes to them. And then they have to work with locals to ensure like permitting and affordability and all that stuff. So you gotta have, you know, these kinds of conversations are great. I need more of these conversations over the next several months. Whatever solution, this is really a blank canvas, y'all. So whatever solutions you have, whatever ideas, suggestions, we're all for it. And if it means getting on radio stations and doing Ask Me Anything in different segments, we've clearly recognized that older adults like myself use Facebook a lot. Younger people, like my wife, a little bit more, she does TikTok and Instagram and whatever, right? So different things require different abilities to communicate to people. So count us in as a partner. We spend a lot of time in seminars, you guys are all pretty aware of. And so if you said, I need you guys to be here to do this, then we'll come to be here, right? Any last minute questions, thoughts?
I'm not sure they're not already filling it out online.
Good.
I see like 6 or 8 people with a phone in their hand.
We want to thank everybody for coming. If there are no other thoughts or questions, we'll be here for a while. And if you want to leave any feedback or find out, we will forward you the information. Everybody, thank you for your time today. We'll call this meeting adjourned. Thank you. Appreciate it.